and waiting while it does all of its things. And there we go. We are live.
Yay.
That's something else I change. Why is that not working? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, welcome to tonight's Super Bowl Paranormal Encyclopedia episode. Not that we will be actually talking about the Super Bowl, for the record. Um,
No, we'll be talking
Instead,
about the superb owl.
indeed. Um, Instead, we have a guest. I am going to do my usual posting of links. So while I do that, Patrick, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, audience. I'm Patrick. Oh, you meant more. I'm Patrick Thomas. I'm an author. I write the Murphy's Law series, and the universe has several spin-offs. I write the Dear Cthulhu advice columns. I write Mystic Investigators, Bikini Jones, the 142nd Starborn, and as Patrick T. Phibbs, I write books for kids, including The Undead Kid Diaries, Joy Reaper Checks Out, and the Babe B Bear Mysteries, and Emotional Support Nightmare. There we go.
I had forgotten that one until you just mentioned it. It's like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about you talk about that one at least once before. Um, and of course, we had to talk a little bit before the show, and we were going to at least start on the subject of Cthulhu, Dear Cthulhu, I
Um,
believe.
yep, Dear Cthulhu recently celebrated its, we're having a couple things. Its 20th anniversary of its first columns being printed in magazines in December 2004 in Nth Degree, and then in early 2005 in Cthulhu Sex Magazine, which, if you haven't heard of it, probably a little confused by the title, but their subtitle is Blood, Sex, and Tentacles. Both are wonderful magazines that unfortunately have retired, and their editors and staff have gone on to bigger and better things.
I'm just thinking if all of the copies of Cthulhu 6 magazine I've gathered over the years, and you know from whom, um, were still around, it might be taller than I am.
But no, it did very well. Apparently, one thing that helped it, it was on the newsstands, but because of the word sex, they misfiled it. So instead of putting it with Asimov's and Alfred Hitchcock and all the rest, they put it next to Maxim. So apparently that helped sales quite a bit.
Hmm.
I have to wonder how many people were very disappointed, and two, how many bought it again anyway.
Maxim was too tame, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was some good fiction in there. There's the Dear Cthulhu itself. Um.
What more
So
reason?
yeah, I was going to say, so, before we get into the idea, it's a Dear Cthulhu, though I think the idea is relatively self-explanatory. Patrick, why don't you tell the like one person who may ever hear this who's never heard of him who Cthulhu is?
Cthulhu is part of the Lovecraftian mythos. He lives, he sleeps under the Pacific Ocean in Rylith, and he lies dreaming. And a couple times in the columns, he's dreaming. When he wakes up, we may all vanish, or have to serve him as slaves. Whatever his mood is for the day, and he chased a boat in a story, and he's got tentacles for a face, and he's got wings on his back. He's green, he's gigantic, and he just caught on because I guess instead of the typical Lovecraftian indescribable horror, he was described. And a cool visual. If you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, they ripped off Cthulhu for Davy Jones. They just didn't give
Oh,
him
no
wings.
question.
So he has, because it's public domain, it's like Frankenstein or Dracula, and a lot of people have taken him to heart, even though he's going to, one day rise up and destroy the earth, or make everyone serve him, depending again on his mood. And that gives him some of his. In Dear Cthulhu, he is a moral authority for all the wrong reasons. And these collections both came out last year. We have Cthulhu Take the Wheel, and then we have In Cthulhu We Trust. And these are the seventh and eighth collections thus far. But it's easy. It would have been easy to write, oh, destroy them, kill them, murder them, raise them to the ground, but that would have been boring after a couple columns. So instead, I have him as a moral authority, and moral is questionable there, but for all the wrong reasons. For instance, he's against adultery because you make vows to the other person. And if you make a vow, you should not break it, because his followers in the cult of Cthulhu, the world's 12th fastest growing religion, according to him, they make vows to him. And if they start seeing other people break vows, they may think they can break their vows. And then it would just take up too much time out of Cthulhu's busy schedule to go around and punish them all. So just no human should do that. He's against killing. Because one day all of humanity will belong to him, and you're poaching. So that's, moral authority for the wrong reasons. Although there are times he will condone, or, you've already done it, so let's figure out how to do it. Like in one of the early columns, a teenage kid writes him and says his grandmother has died, but they were living in her house and she was getting her welfare checks. It was a while ago. Now it's, cards and all that. And they were cashing them, but grandma was still in the bed and they just were using air freshener and keeping the door closed. And they wanted to know what to do. And he recommended, instead of going on the internet and searching, go to something called the library and take out some, look at some books on mummification, but don't take them out because that would leave a paper trail, and then mummify grandma. And that might help you with the smell and let the scam go on a little bit longer.
I also have to say, having read many of the collections, though I'm a little behind, I need to pick up the new ones, and I think at least one or two before them. What always amuses me about the series is a lot of the advice, well, morally questionable. It's like, well, if you're going to do something, this makes sense.
Well, I've always, and this is the writer in me, because writers, we like things to make sense. In real life, doesn't. More often than not. But you see these criminals do things, and you're like, that is so stupid. Mm-hmm. Why would you not do basic things ahead of time to make sure you're not caught? The guy, wasn't there a guy who put, what did he put on his face? Vaseline or something? So the infrared
at least
cameras,
one cases.
Yeah, couldn't catch him and see him, and it doesn't work that way. The same people who listen to the internet, people that if you put your penny in the microwave, it'll shrink down, and somebody posts a little bit later, you blew up my microwave.
Why didn't you listen to me?
So, but when sometimes I do take things that happen in the news and run with it, and have him give advice that for some reason most people don't think ahead of time. If you're going to plan to kill somebody, make a good plan. Don't just go over and do it. If you're going to rob a bank, come up with a smart way to make it happen, as opposed to just going in and getting caught. So
gods. Oh, Cthulhu, in fact. One of our regular listeners in the chat told the rest of the story. It's even dumber than we think. So apparently it was lemon juice.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And not just infrared. The robber in question thought it would make him invisible because when he was a kid, he used lemon juice to make invisible ink.
Oh, boy.
But then if he sweated, he'd become visible again. That's you had to heat up the invisible ink.
Yes.
With the logic there is just bulletproof.
What did he soak the clothes in it, or was he naked?
That's a good question. Particularly because I know there's another pair of would-be bank robbers that did in fact rob a bank completely naked. Why? Because they thought clothes would make them easier to identify.
Well, honestly, if it was in the day before everyone had a camera and it was a woman, there's a good chance no one would be able to describe her face back in the old days, you know.
But no, it was two
Even a man,
guys.
yeah. Or do the really stupid go naked but with a mask. But
Oh
your
God.
escape, you're going to kind of be noticed, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be on the
So how are
lookout
you
for
going to
two
carry
naked
clothing?
men.
Possibly wearing masks.
And where do you hide the weapon
Or the money?
or the money?
Yeah.
Well, that's why they have the big gallon jug of lemon juice waiting outside.
Yeah.
You've got it. Clearly, they should have written Cthulhu and asked for bank robbery advice.
Actually, a friend of mine used to be a bank manager, and I asked him in case I should ever write and I haven't yet, but what's the best way to rob a bank? He's like, on Halloween. Because somebody walking into a bank with a mask on Halloween would not be that unusual, although a lot of banks now do have signs up on Halloween, please take your mask off before you enter. Because I guess other people may have figured that out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never thought about it, but I don't spend that much time thinking about how to rob banks for some reason. But it does
That's
seem
not,
like a
not
better
worth the effort.
plan.
I do have a
Yeah.
question for Patrick. With the Dear Cthulhu, do you ever actually get people writing in with legitimate questions, or do you just make them all up?
I make the majority up on both sides, but I have gotten a few letters over the years, and I think I've actually used only 3 because some of the others weren't usable.
Okay.
It was, what wouldn't have worked well. It was carried by a music magazine called Dig This Real. So it was all about the underground music scene. Came, on the stands in a plastic bag with, when they went full color, in a plastic bag with a CD sampling of the bands interviewed inside, like a song from each band or an interview from somebody on the CD, and Dear Cthulhu. But they were sold in Central America as well as the United States. I don't understand how that happened, but she would get emails from people in Central America saying, is this really how things are in America? That this stuff really happens? And she would email them back, yes, it is. But I did get more letters from that magazine than I did from any other. So
I'm also just thinking the fact I know I've suggested at least one idea to you once. I'm wondering if you even remember.
I do not at the moment, but if you remind me.
So a friend of mine a very long time ago wanted to call into the radio show I used to do before YouTube existed, let alone before I was on it. With the question of she was a recently converted Satanist and wanted to know if we had any suggestions to do what to do with all of the leftover goat's blood.
Actually, I didn't do anything with it, but that could be interesting. He'd probably ask, did you refrigerate it or not? Because the goat would be good, but the blood by itself, it's good as part of a sauce, the base for, good, but, by itself, do you, mix it in with a slushy or, because actually his favorite food is kittens with hollandaise sauce, which apparently, is a delicacy in, Rylith. And oddly, he likes dogs because they're the only creature on Earth that is will just love something and be loyal and care and that kind of thing. So actually, he's a fan of dogs. He eats cats. He hasn't really spoken up in iguanas or ferrets yet.
Well, I remain Christian. I have to say I approve of Lord Cthulhu's taste in pets. I'm not a cat. I am not a cat person.
Well, he did address goldfish in one column because we had somebody who very lonely person who only friend was their goldfish Finny, and Finny died, and he flushed Finny down the toilet, and then he couldn't bring himself to use the toilet because he turned it into a shrine to Finney's memory. So he's like, I try to go to the bathroom at work and before I get home. Um, I tried at night for a while, but there's some things the garbage disposal just can't handle. And he goes to the gas station down the road, but he never buys anything. And they trying to get him not, trying to kick him out, but he saved all his receipts from buying Finney's gold food there over the years, so he could prove that he bought something for each time he uses the bathroom. And you know, he Cthulhu says he's not with that attitude. He's not really right for the cult of Cthulhu. But he was suicidal, so he said, if you decide to go that route, instead of doing it yourself and losing your insurance policy and all that, my worshipers need practice on real people, but we only take volunteers because it's just too hard going out and catching people and bringing them in. Kind of a Monty Python riff there,
Yes.
And if he'd volunteer, they'd do it because you don't want someone fumbling on the night of the star's alignment and messing up the sacrifice, So,
Yeah, just funny. There is a video on YouTube at the moment. It's a few years old, I think, but that approaches itself as a telemarketer, specifically calling people to try to recruit them to be human sacrifices.
that sounds like fun.
Yeah, though Cthulhu wouldn't approve, it wasn't for him.
Well,
I
then,
forget.
There's a number of Cthulhu parody songs as well. I've heard a couple of them. It's like a Shoggoth on the roof instead of Fiddler on the roof. Like
Yep.
they had one of those. They had the song "Hey There, Delilah." They did "Hey There, Cthulhu."
I need to look these up.
Yeah, they're on YouTube. They're quite funny.
I mean, having grown up, and the only time I had heard of Cthulhu when I was a kid was the real Ghostbusters cartoon, funny enough. And then a friend of mine lent me a collection of H.P. Lovecraft stories, and down the rabbit hole I fell. I'll let you know if I ever find a way out.
There
Not
you
that I'm
go.
looking.
Well, I think just because of the
Yeah,
questionable things of the time period, it's sometimes easier to read more modern. I hate to say politically correct, but some of the stuff in there was very treating people who are people as subhuman, referring to them. So, but his monsters were right on. So, but maybe because if you live in a society that treats people like that, which we might consider monsters now, your monsters are going to be much more terrifying than what's around you every day.
unfortunately, agree just by virtue of the he has his other faults as a writer, but I generally enjoy a lot of his stories. Though, yeah, I could do without the racism.
But
Um,
he created something that lives beyond him, is spread beyond him, and people are still riffing on today. So
Heck, he created the Necronomicon, which just reached the point where it might be better known than Lovecraft personally, and it certainly has gotten to the point where people keep publishing it as if it's a real book.
yep, that's yeah. But some of the covers look lovely, and
True.
but if people get more famous for their creations, I think that's speaks to what they created. So
That's an excellent point. I just wish I didn't have to occasionally try to explain to people, no, the Lovecraft made up the Necronomicon. He was very clear that it was something he invented out of his own mind, and he had no respect for the paranormal or the occult at all. So if he thought it was real, he wouldn't have hid it.
well, I mean,
But
Cthulhu has been used from Scooby Doo to Rick and Morty,
true.
you know. Um, and you can see actually, in terms of movies, I mean, Ghostbusters is
Yep.
basically a Lovecraftian, probably the best Lovecraftian movie ever made. There's another one which is one of my favorite movies, but it's not as well known, To Cast a Deadly Spell,
Oh, it's a great
with Fred
movie.
Ward.
Yes.
Oh,
That one and the sequel.
see, I did not like the sequel.
You didn't like
I mean, they beat you over the head with communists and witch hunt, and I was okay with that. But I guess I just didn't like what's his name, Hopper, Dennis Hopper.
Dennis
Um,
Hopper.
they made, you know, the traditional trench coat, fedora, private eye who had it down. Fred Ward had it down perfect, to the Hawaiian shirt wearing 50s groovy almost kind of, and it lost the plot for me. The only link was the landlord, and she was good, but
Yeah.
you needed a witch for the witch hunt.
I can
So
actually name 3 adaptations of Lovecraft that you guys may have, but most of my listeners haven't, that are genuinely, in my opinion, quite good. Other than the 2 that you just named, both of which I'm not dismissing in any sense. Probably the best known one would be John Carpenter's At the Mouth of Madness, which is an absolutely brilliant, deeply Lovecraftian story that's not actually based on a single Lovecraft story. Much
well,
like
when you have
Ghostbusters.
yep, when you have the great cosmic horrors, you know, it kind of lends itself to that. So, you know,
There are also a pair of small independent adaptations, one of which is a direct black and stylistically chosen black and white adaptation of the Call of Cthulhu that uses stop motion animation at the end when Cthulhu appears, specifically to keep that 1930s era aesthetic that fits Lovecraft so well. Um, and there is an adaptation of one of my favorite Lovecraftian stories, The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, which is also very independent, not very well known, but an animated story done in the animation style of Reading Rainbow,
oh, hmm.
which works on a beautifully simple level. Oh, I sadly do not know the name, remember the name of either production company. Otherwise, I would give them a shout out. And last I had heard, though I never saw it, the guys who did the Call of Cthulhu adaptation were working on an adaptation of another great story, The Whisperer in the Darkness. But if this was some years ago, and if they ever actually got around to it, I have no idea.
Well, you know, the passion projects a lot of times, you know, are better than the commercial
Oh
because, you
yes,
know, they're not done, even if they don't have the budget to do all the other things. The acting and the writing is more, you know, people are doing it not for the money, but for, you know, because they love the creative process or the theme materials. Uh, you know, and it seems like a lot of times with the bigger productions, you have to go by certain rules and guidelines, and corporate, you know, the corporate structure will come down and say, yeah, we got to get rid of this part, or we got to get rid of this part. I'm trying to remember. I just heard something about, I think it was Young Frankenstein. Mel Brooks hated the idea of the putting on the Ritz scene, and Gene Wilder like fought to keep it in, and you know, and that isn't even corporate. Mel Brooks afterwards, you know, I was wrong
Yeah.
yeah.
after they actually did it, you know. But
And
Gene
there's a
Wilder had it in his head, and you know, it's, you know, when someone sees it, you know, kind of like you try sometimes to explain a story, and it doesn't quite work until you actually write it, and the other person reads it, and they go, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
I was also going to say that's a really good example. The other example I always like is that there is an old 90s era Star Wars fan film called Troops, which is a Star Wars fan film in the vein of the old TV show Cops.
I remember that.
That was a great. That was a great short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
And I
beautiful,
think, if I'm not mistaken, they got hired by George Lucas.
they worked on episode one, in fact.
There you go. Well, okay. Well, they at least got to do it, even if it was episode one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And well, I'm not going to defend episode one. There are some legitimately good, enjoyable parts of that movie, not the least of which being it may very well have the best lightsaber duel in all of Star Wars.
Yes, but when you can watch a movie with the sound off and it's, as good, if not better, yeah. I actually think,
Yeah.
well, switching to Star Wars, like the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus series, I thought was better than the three movies.
Yeah.
You know, I think they did a better job. It was better written, better characterized, just better overall. And if they had done that, we'd be in a different place with the other movies.
As someone who genuinely likes the prequels, not so much the sequels, I would say I agree with you about the Obi-Wan series. Despite the fact, oddly, at least to me, it's not that popular with Star Wars fans.
Well, I think, each movie had some points that made you, not horrified that you paid money to see it in the theater.
Yeah.
But the fight scene with Yoda in the, episode 2 was wonderful. And when Anakin went dark and killed all the young Jedis in the temple, I just don't think the movie would have the same effect on somebody watching it if they had not seen episodes 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
The original trilogy, because it was powerful. But if you hadn't seen it, which story should work regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
that's the big problem with the prequels is they really don't work unless you know what comes afterwards because they're reverse engineered. And if you just saw them, if you showed somebody those three movies by themselves and they had never seen Star Wars, they probably wouldn't be that engaged in the story.
As opposed to, I don't know, some of the Lethal Weapon movies, you don't have to see the first one.
Right.
Or, Rush Hour 2, you don't have to see Rush Hour 1 to appreciate it. You might get a little bit more at the beginning. Oh, they're back, they're friends. I really like that. But the movie will take you along, regardless if, after the first few minutes, if you saw the first one.
Right. Looks like Kevin has frozen a little
Ah,
and now dropped
so
out.
let's see. The snow flows white on the mountain tonight. Oh, wait, no, not frozen.
So what do you have new that's that you're working on or that's coming out?
Well, I have the third Bikini Jones, which will be out shortly. Um, Bikini Jones versus the Emperor of Planet Z, where Bikini Jones is forced into her eighth marriage to save a planet from destruction. Because it's an overused plot in a lot of things. Let's see, Flash Gordon, Ming wants Dale Arden to marry him, and the Mummy, the good Mummy with Brendan Fraser. Yeah,
gentlemen,
the
sorry.
Mummy wants the girlfriend. So it's an overused plot. So with Bikini Jones, it falls short of camp, but it has a flavor strip maybe of camp going through it. So I just take the tropes and just run with them. She has 5 doctorates. She is trained by the Clown Ninja monks of Newark in martial arts. She has the nose squeeze knockout, like Vulcan nerve pinch, but it's for the nose. In a future book, I have plans that when the monks make balloon animals or balloon other things, they are actually usable. So the balloon animals can walk, or if they make a balloon baseball bat, it would hit a ball, or that kind of thing. So I managed to take. It's an overused trope, at least in artwork, and definitely in more B movies and comic books and video games. But why, and D&D, why is a woman fighting dragons, aliens, a war in a bikini top? It makes no sense. It's not protective. It's kind of like there's a internet short that they're playing a game and they're like, "Here is your armor, sir," and "Ma'am, here is yours. It looks awful small," given a bikini. "Oh, it's fine." No, there's a lot of unprotected. No, no, no. So in the Bikini Jones books, I come up with a reason why somebody would do that. And in her case, it's because she's cursed. When she was a 16-year-old, she was sunbathing in the privacy of her fenced-in backyard in a bikini, which, it's your backyard. Do what you want to do. And her pervy neighbor comes over and there's a knothole in the fence and he peers in and he's being all, creepy. And his wife comes out and catches him. And turns out she is a very powerful witch. And instead of blaming her husband, she blames Mary Sue Jones. And because Bikini is the ultimate Mary Sue, I figured it made more sense for that to be her name. So we'll just lean into the tropes. Curses her to forever wear a bikini. So if she takes off a bikini, another bikini reappears. If she puts clothes on over the bikini, they disappear. And this is why she does it. And it's so how often happens in these cases, she saves the world on a semi-regular basis. So she's kind of a mix of like Reed Richards, Doc Savage, and I guess, any Pamela Anderson part. So
I will also say, for the record, I was a little skeptical when you first described the concept of Bikini Jones to me. And then I sat down and read the two books. Folks, I highly recommend them. They're over the top and deeply corny in exactly the right way.
Thank you. That's what I was trying for.
And by the way, hi again, if anybody is wondering. For some unknown reason, my internet just went out. That's where I went.
We covered for you.
Yeah, I was like, I came back. It was like, I can keep my mouth shut. They're doing fine.
Well, we were talking about the third Bikini Jones book, which will be out very shortly. Bikini Jones versus the Emperor of Planet Z. And one of the big tropes is the villain forcing the female hero and or the male hero's female companion to marry them. And I lean into it. This is her eighth marriage. 7 of them have been forced. 1, she was drunk. And one of her ex-husbands stops by and interrupts the wedding, causes some trouble.
As they do.
Yeah. So she does it to save a planet from being destroyed after she tries to fight off the enemy. But, and without doing many spoilers, she's got to take over an empire from within. And being Bikini Jones, she can do that by the end of the book.
And I'll be picking up this book. I can tell you that. It's like, no, I love the first 2. I want to see the next one.
Thank you.
You pretty much had me at there'll be a new Bikini Jones book out shortly.
Well, thank you. I do hope at some point to get some with her cousin, Cthulhu Jones, who is the son of Cthulhu. It turns out Bikini's aunt is a super freak and many other things, and she joins a cult, and she sabotages the summoning of Cthulhu, and I don't want to give too much away, and instead of being the sacrifice to Cthulhu, she is the bride of Cthulhu. And from that, we get Cthulhu Jones. So, and don't want to ruin too much more, but that seems a pretty basic summary. And the character is fun. So,
there is a wonderful parody song on YouTube, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend looking it up, called, I don't remember if this is the name, but it is definitely a chorus in the song. Yeah, it's YouTube, and we're past the 3-second mark. I fuck Cthulhu good.
Oh, well, there you go.
Which has the wonderful line, I thought I was in for some cosmic horror. It turns out I'm just a cosmic whore.
There
It
you
goes
go. Well,
downward from there.
well, you know, Cthulhu needs love too. Oh,
Yes.
that was an interesting title for a future book. Cthulhu needs love too. Hmm. The sequel. Wait, no, that not that too. But
Although,
but yeah,
as Cthulhu's writing partner, I have a very serious question that you may choose not to ask if to answer if you don't want to answer for legal reasons. Can you confirm rumors that Cthulhu is leaving the Republican Party because it's gotten too evil?
yeah, he's no longer the lesser of two evils, but he has addressed the running for president in one of the columns where it is, you know, why would he, you know, take a step down to become president? Kind of like Oprah. Why would Oprah become president? She's Oprah. You know, for her, you know, becoming president would be a step down. You know, so for Cthulhu, it would be a step down. Besides, he can pull the strings from behind, which would be probably better than many of the situations we find ourselves in these days.
Yeah. Which is why, well, yes, it would be a step down. It's like, yeah, if Cthulhu ran for president at this point, I'd vote for him.
I
We
think
could
he
do
would
we
do.
could
He
do
would.
worse than honestly just saying, look, I'm either going to enslave or murder you all and devour your souls. At least he's honest.
There you go. He, you know, he tells you right out front what he wants. You know, because he's not too worried about being hurt by anybody. So
Yep. Except steam powered ships.
there is that.
Because every god has to have its weakness, apparently.
But you know, there's so few steam powered ships left these days. He's getting cocky.
Yeah. They'd have to build one from mothballs or something.
There you
And
go.
at the
Find one of those maritime museums that has one and get it working again.
which itself could actually be an entertaining short story. Cthulhu is arisen and somebody has to find a steam powered ship and refurbish it to actually go stop him.
And then the historical society is trying to stop it. Yeah, we may die, but we can't ruin this important historical artifact.
Exactly.
So
They could get the ghost of Mark Twain to pilot it.
Yes.
there
Well,
you go.
you can make an argument that the historical society in question are the ones that summoned Cthulhu to begin with because they wanted to reinforce the importance of steam power because they feel it's gotten lesser in recent years, and steampunk just isn't quite there yet.
Okay, that works. Well, in Bikini Jones versus the Sea Monsters, book two, I do something with the Esoteric Order of Dagon. They have a spin-off. And the spin-off become televangelists. And they are deep ones and they're preaching on TV and they're very, you know, we can prove it, you know, if you will mate with one of our members, your child will live forever. And Bikini Jones says, no, it's like 400 years. It's a long time. It's not forever. And then they start protesting Bikini Jones for her immorality for wearing a bikini everywhere. So they start doing, you know, a campaign to get her canceled because she's wearing a bikini. And the real reason is the bishop, the head's wife, found him looking at a Bikini Jones video, and her son had a poster of her on the wall, and he, you know, she
Yep.
got upset, and so now it's time to cancel Bikini Jones.
Although all this talks of bikinis does make me think of another series of stories of yours that I think deserves attention, which would be the Daymore stories.
Thank you. Although in that one, I still go with the theory that fighting in a bikini is stupid, but they have the Daymore badge, which can project the illusion of a skimpy outfit over full body armor. So, you know, it distracts because most of their people they're fighting are males, and you know, males can be distracted easily for some reason. And
Can't imagine why.
Yep. And there we go. But yeah, they actually are wearing. They appear to be in skimpy D&D style armor, or Red Sonja style armor, but they are in fact, you know, full body armor protected. So,
And there's at least one D&D parody game that proposes that the reason that chainmail bikinis or simply wearing censorship bar ribbons works as armor isn't even necessarily magical, it's just distraction. For the same logic of men are men, for the most
There
part.
you go.
But I have to certainly say, I wouldn't recommend it unless you have some sort of magical Daymore badge. But let's face it, in the real world, wearing a bikini or less into battle would be an effective tactic for men and women, really, because it's a reaction either way.
Yes, but I think it'd be better in non-hand-to-hand combat.
Also
If you're
true.
trying to distract somebody from, to give you the first shot, might work.
Yeah.
But if you're going hand to hand, then it's going to matter more on the skills and the body weight and the strength of each person. And typically, the smaller, weaker person has to do something fast, because in the long run, the larger, stronger person will win. So they have to do something to end the battle quickly in their favor, but not
Yes,
falling
generally.
down and yelling.
The only real difference is if the big, strong person has absolutely no freaking idea what they're doing, and the very small person has a lot of training. Then the small person has a slightly better chance, and still is
Particularly
probably
if
going to get
they're,
their ass kicked.
yeah. Oh, it's not that small people can't win. It's just
Yeah.
it's not in their favor, so they have to be better than the average bear.
Yep. Which is why you cheat and bring a gun or a sword.
Exactly. I think everyone loves that scene in the first Indiana Jones movie. Boom.
Yep.
Just because it makes so much sense, and we've never seen it before.
And all
So,
thanks to Harrison Ford having the flu.
Actually, as I understand it, it's more like all thanks to Harrison Ford and most of the cast having dysentery.
Hmm.
He had major serious diarrhea. Most of the cast had major serious diarrhea. And yes, he looked at George Lucas. It was supposed to be a long fight between whip and sword. And wanting to go to the bathroom and spend some time there quite badly, he just looks at George Lucas and goes, "Can I just shoot him?"
Yeah, Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
He said, I've got a gun.
Yeah.
Why don't I just
Which is what
it makes
everyone
sense.
would do in that situation.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Three Musketeers, always think, oh, the Musketeers in general, they go straight to the swords. They have muskets. They can at least get one person.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're called musketeers for a reason. People
But in a lot
forget
of the
that.
movies, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Granted,
but
on the other
people
hand,
people want the sword fight. People want
true. The sad part to me, at least, is I can think of two excellent reasons why you can have them shoot the gun as is obvious and still have the cool sword fight. One being the best flintlock pistol in history is still a one-shot weapon. And once you fight, you shoot your shot, you cannot load another one while somebody charges you with a sword. The
Yep.
other being they weren't very accurate.
Exactly.
Well, the Zorro and some of the Zorros, he had the one shot and then went to the sword.
Yes. And
And
why some black pirates, particularly Blackbeard, carried multiple pistols.
yep. So that way they could shoot, take another one, shoot, take another one, and put some salt, pepper in their beard to terrify their opponents.
Yep.
So,
There's
which
actually,
that would work.
I have to say, there is a video game that I'm perfect, a little fond of, I will admit, that actually does take that into account. One of the Assassin's Creed games, 3 or 4, you play a pirate. And the reality, yes, you get a pistol. You get one shot, and then you can either draw your sword or spend the next 10 seconds reloading. Or get multiple pistols.
That makes much more sense.
Yeah.
But if you want to have a sword fight, the one shot weapon works the best because then
Yep.
you take your shot, maybe you miss, maybe you hit a non-vital organ. Like
Yeah.
I'm in Lungo Mentalaria, you killed my father, prepare to die, bang, would not have been as much fun. You
Fun,
ask me what I want.
fun though, in another way.
Nah, that scene is too
No.
beautiful to have missed. You know, the
Um,
whole he's wounded. You killed my father, prepared to die. Stop saying that.
which makes me think of something that I want to recommend to you if you haven't seen it, and I want to recommend to everyone listening. There is on YouTube a series that was done during the pandemic called Home Movies: The Princess Bride. Have you heard
I,
of it?
yeah, I have. All they get different celebrities to play different snippets of parts and splice them
Yep,
all together.
including starting with the kid in the bed in the very first snippet is um Adam Savage alive today at his current, not aged in any sense, laying in the bed.
And didn't oh, why am I blanking on his name? I don't want to call him Meathead, especially after the tragedy recently. Rob Reiner.
Right.
Yes,
Didn't he play the
not
grandfather reading the story at one point?
it's I think he did, but there's even a cooler scene than that because there's this very touching scene I want to say at the end of the whole sequence, which is Carl Reiner reading the
Played,
story to Rob
yeah,
Reiner.
Reiner. Yes, that was very nice because he gets the hat, and yeah, that's how they ended
Yeah,
it. That was beautiful.
yeah, it was. The whole thing is gorgeous. I highly recommend anyone listening who hasn't. I highly recommend you go look it up. It is clearly just a love letter to the original movie by a lot of actors having entirely too much fun with whatever they had lying around the house. I
And
mean,
that's why
whatever,
they got so many people because
yeah.
people didn't have anything to do.
And yes, and it was fun. In fact, they didn't make money on it. They wound up donating it to a charity. I forget which one, but a good charity. So
The
that's
As
all.
You Wish Foundation.
I'll say my personal favorite scene being there's one of the ways they do the Clips Insanity scene is Jack Black climbing
Mhm.
either a set of stairs or the sidewalk, I forget which, and instead of a rapier, he's carrying a plastic toy lightsaber.
No, that works. I saw it a long time ago, and I remember enjoying it.
Yeah.
But both the book and the movie, and that is one of the cases where the book and the movie are so much closer than typical because the guy who wrote the book wrote the screenplay, William
Yeah.
The
Goldman,
way around.
and
He wrote the screenplay first and then he wrote the book.
no,
You
I
sure
do
about that?
not believe so, because the book was out and he met Rob Reiner at a Broadway show, according to the whatever anniversary edition of the Princess Bride introduction, and he said, "Oh, I wrote this book. Why don't you give it to your son?" His son being Rob Reiner, who would later make the movie. And he tells about how he sold the rights to Fox, and then the guy who was championing it left, and the new guy was getting rid of all the old projects. So he did something very unusual. He went to Fox and bought the rights to his own book back. So then he had them later. And there were like all these almost. At one point, Arnold was supposed to play Andre the Giant's part.
Yeah.
And by the time the movie actually got made, Arnold was too big for them to be able to afford, I guess. And honestly, as much as I enjoy Arnold's movies, I don't think anyone could do a better job in that part than Andre the Giant.
No, Andre the Giant was brilliant. And I looked it up. I will acknowledge the fact I am in fact wrong. William Goldman, the author, wrote the book first and did the screenplay later.
Yeah. He wrote several books.
Yes,
Good writer.
Yep. He wrote it for his daughters because he told them to pick the next thing, and one chose a princess and one chose a bride. And so he worked them all together and somehow got, that work of art. But from the book to the screen, like the line, "Life is pain, princess. Anyone who tells you different is trying to sell you something." In the book, it's actually said by Inigo Montoya's father.
Mm.
But he kept the line, gave it to another character, and it still worked.
Mhm.
And in the book, you get to meet the father and the swordsmith, and they do such a wonderful job with it. And actually, if people are not aware, they did do what was it, Buttercup's daughter? He did write the first few chapters of the sequel because in the books he maintains he didn't actually write the book, he just translated it from what's the name, R.F. Morganson, and
Argarth Morgenstern.
yeah, he did some other books that were by him, like The Gondolier, which was a decent book. Was no Princess Bride, was a good book. So it was the gimmick, and the reason he did in the introduction is because the family, the estate, and I came to an agreement. And like he put this whole thing in there where Stephen King was originally supposed to do the translation for The Princess Bride, but it didn't work out, so he got the job. And
King was going to do the Buttercup Stutter instead because he's actually from Florin.
Something like that. But yeah, but obviously Stephen King wasn't.
Yeah, it was a joke. The whole thing was, and I actually just looked it up to make sure my memory was correct, and apparently is, this time at least. In fact, that was always a joke. There was never fully. It was a joke first chapter. It was never intended to be a full sequel.
Right. No, because it was fun to read. But
oh yes, absolutely.
It gave you a chance to try and, well, where is it going to go?
Yeah.
And sadly, it didn't happen. But there's some things you just can't match.
This is true. It's like, nope, you don't mess with perfection.
No. And what is it? There's so few perfect will go with movies in this world.
Yes.
So, yeah. It'd be a shame to
ruin this one.
So, but yeah, no, that yeah. And just wonderful movie. My favorite movie of all time. One, if I had to pick like top number of books, it wouldn't be the top book, but it would be, if I made a list, it'd be somewhere on that list.
I would not call it my favorite movie of all time, but it's at least within the top 10, maybe the top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. It is a great movie.
So what is your top movie then?
And for a very specific reason that goes beyond the movie itself, the original unmodified Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
The reason being that while technically I remember seeing Empire Strikes Back as well, just barely, Return of the Jedi is one of the first movies I ever remember seeing in the theater as a child. And my main memory of Empire Strikes Back is a brief flash of a scene with from Luke's point of view in the snow speeder going at the AT-ATs. Because I refuse to call them AT-ATs. Even though apparently it's technically correct.
Well, they get to name their stuff.
Yep. And I get to be a stubborn old coot and call it whatever I want because I'm a stubborn old coot.
Yeah, you can tell them whatever we're going to call the giant-legged vehicles to get off your lawn if you like.
Yep. And I'd probably try to steal it if one showed up on my lawn. That is the one great toy of my childhood I never got but wanted was an AT-AT.
Well, there you go. Now people know what to get you for Christmas.
Indeed. Yeah, if you don't want to send money to a Patreon, but you happen to have a toy AT-AT lying around, folks, reach out. My email's in the description.
And you have to let us know if that works.
I'm skeptical, but it would be fun.
Well, there might be someone out there who's got like a bag of old toys, or maybe even a broken one. They were like, oh, I guess I'll throw this. Oh, well, no, I'll send it. And there you go. You could figure a way to put it back together.
Or possibly just, I think if somebody sent me a broken one, I might keep it as is, just in honor of the fact somebody actually went through the trouble to send me one. You know what I mean?
They do get broken and fall down. You could just pose it like that.
Yeah, good point. I had a friend when I was a kid who had one. It was a big toy. The old days in the giant when toys were huge. I remember having the Millennium Falcon, and I think like, which just now I'm going down 80s TV and movie toys of my childhood.
But we should probably try to get back to the interview.
Yeah, that might work.
It's actually almost 9 now.
Yeah.
So
Granted,
what have you always wanted to ask, but we're too afraid?
I'm trying to think. The only downside being we've done this together so many times. Almost everything I've ever thought of to ask you, I've asked you on or off air at some point. And the ones I ask off air, there's usually a reason I don't ask them on air because I don't want to spoil for somebody who hasn't read almost everything. Oh, wait, there's the obvious question I want that has been burning in my mind for a while now. When
Okay.
are we going to get the next Murphy related book?
Uh, I've been working on it for a few years. I wanted to have it done by the end of August, and I just, within the last couple of weeks, finished the compiled first draft. It is 170,000 words at present, which is why it's taken so long. It is before Twilight, and the tagline is
Oh,
before the twilight of the gods, there will be a brief intermission. And it follows both Redemption Road with Loki and Fairy Rides the Lightning with Terabel, because it picks up right at the end of that book, literally a day or two after.
Mhm.
And it is the fallout. Without giving a spoiler to anyone, the devil and Odin in my universe are feuding over a soul. We won't go into more details than that because that really doesn't give much of a spoiler. But the person sold his soul to the devil, but died a hero in front of a Valkyrie. So the Valkyrie claimed him before the devil could, and now the devil's been embarrassed and does not take that well. And it has led to a shadow campaign, and the shadow campaign is about to become a non-shadow campaign between the two. So it is, it's, I'm biased, really good so far. I have to clean it up a lot before, but next year will be the 30th anniversary of Murphy's Law, and if it's not out before then, it will be out for that. Because why not use that to celebrate the 30th anniversary?
Makes sense.
And that'll be the
There,
10th book.
which I'm looking for. I will say, folks, Murphy's Law is one of my favorite book series of all time, to be quite frank.
Me too,
Um,
but of different reasons, probably.
and you're slightly more you it's your book
More
series, so you're a
biased,
little, might be a little biased. Um,
a little.
but that said, the soul in question, and I'm not going to go further because while yes, I know who it is, I don't want to spoil either, is one of my favorite characters from the series, which is particularly fascinating because I wasn't a huge fan of him the first time I read his first story. He grew on me. Exactly like the main character of Fairy Rides Lightning, because I didn't originally like Terabelle, and she is now one of my favorite characters.
Well, she plays a big part in this book too. So,
Fantastic.
um, but yeah, like I said, there's basically a both sides gather their forces, and I can give this much away. The battle is held in Camden, New Jersey. So, for reasons that will become evident when one reads the book, which is a city in New Jersey right across the Delaware from Philadelphia.
Yes. With not the best reputation for people like myself who aren't live, and for that, all three of us that all live in the vicinity of New Jersey, or sadly, in my case, in the fiery hills that is New Jersey.
Well, and when I was a kid, my uncle was in New Jersey, and he always made fun of us mainlanders. Or he was a mainlander. We were, on Queens and Long Island,
Yeah.
and so we had this New York, New Jersey rivalry. So I put it in the books. But in the first book, when we meet the Antichrist, again, without giving away spoilers, they get a hold of his phone number, and three of the digits are 666, of course, and it's a Jersey area code.
Naturally. I will say I did not grow up in New York. I grew up in a town in Pennsylvania called New Hope, which is directly across the river from New Jersey. You can literally walk from one to the other.
Because the
We
water
had
is
a
so
similar walk.
polluted, you can no.
Although funny enough, there is some evidence. There was at least a debate among historians at one point that Washington and company may have walked across the Delaware River for the Battle of Trenton because it would have just been frozen with ice.
Right. They
But
they just stopped the pose with the boat for a second.
or they just drew the boat, they painted the boat later. Um,
There you go.
the funnier bit of that story being, and I think I mentioned this on air before, but if not, and for you, if you are not aware of it, is that the entire Battle of Trenton essentially boils down to a beer run.
As all good battles do.
Yeah. The story is ridiculous, but it is in fact true. And yeah, the army was out of beer. The beer was, or the army was out of good beer. The beer was the main way that they paid the soldier, or whiskey particularly was the main way they paid the soldiers. Their main source of beer in the colonies was Benjamin Franklin, who used hopless beer because he was in fact allergic to hops, and everyone hated his beer. Hessians, on the other hand, are from what is now modern day Germany, and everyone knows they have good beer there. Thus came the Battle of Trenton, history's greatest beer run.
Out of curiosity, what month was the battle?
December 25th.
Yeah, it was December.
Oh, okay. I was kind of hoping it was October.
No, unfortunately, it
October
was
10th
not.
for a battle over beer would just be too good.
Would,
That's why the
but
river was frozen.
yes. Um, Funny enough, yes, they were camped out in what is now New Hope. At the time, it was called either Coriel's or Wells Ferry. The name changes several times throughout history based on who owned the ferry, which is the main way people crossed the Delaware, particularly if they were going from New York to Philadelphia or back. Um, but they crossed. A British farmer on the New Jersey side saw the lights at the crossing, put two and two together, ran to the fort at Trenton, tried to get in to tell the commander the Americans are coming. The commander, who was drunk at the time because it was Christmas Day and they were having a nice Christmas dinner, wouldn't even let the man in. Absolutely refused to accept the idea the battle was going to happen, and this is why the entire fort and the first major victory of the American side of the Revolutionary War was won without firing a single shot.
We should have more battles like that.
I agree. There's the old episode of Monty Python's Flying Circus where for duels they use a pair of giant fish.
Ah,
Nobody
yes,
dies from fish slapping.
the fish slapping dance.
Yes, it's like I like not winning wars without killing people. It's fun.
Now,
And
I've always said, and obviously this will never happen, that instead of sending the poor rank and file, regular low people and their children to battle, we take the president of each country, lock them in a cage, and give them each a knife and see who wins.
funny enough, I want to say it's Weekly World News, but it was definitely one of the tabloids. But I remember during the Second Iraqi War, I was working in a grocery store, and at least one tabloid had a photo, probably almost certainly photoshopped image of Saddam Hussein holding a really large knife, with the title being that Saddam was suggesting that they settle the invasion like real men and have a one-on-one duel between him and President Bush. It's like, yeah, I'm down for that.
I think that's a way, instead of sending, young people to die for oil,
Yeah,
I think that would make sense. And just again, these are a writer's idea. Having them work in real life probably not as easy as in a story or a book, but I think we messed up when we were done there because we let the companies take the oil anyway. When we beat Germany and Japan, we rebuilt them,
yes,
and now they're our allies. We didn't do the same to Iraq. If we had done that, I think first thing is we take the oil money, we use that instead of giving it to the big corporations and build roads, infrastructure, power lines, high speed cable, and internet access. And 20 years from now, their kids won't want to go to war or jihad or anything because one, we have improved their way of life, and they'll be interested in things the same as people here, so that they'll have a higher quality of life and maybe it's a better way to peace because work with
yeah.
Japan and Germany. And there was
But
actually a Peter Sellers movie, The Mouse That Roared, which the
yep.
premise was the United States pays to rebuild anyone it goes to war with. And Peter Sellers plays the Queen and the Prime Minister and the soldier who does, he plays like 50 parts because it's Peter Sellers. And
It's a novel, by the way, before a movie.
yes, and actually there were, I think, two books and there were
Yes.
two movies, but I don't think the second movie and the second book were the same.
I don't know. There's The Mouse That Roared in the sequel. I've been meaning to, but I haven't been able to find a copy to sit down and read them. But the idea of a
Um,
very small country that deliberately invades, declares war on the U.S. to get the reparations, and then wins by mistake.
Yep. Well, what happens is they made wine. They're a little
Yeah.
country between Switzerland and France, and they're a mile and a half long, but they make wine, and everybody looks like Peter Sellers, and so a lot of inbreeding probably.
A little
And
bit.
they declare war, they send a letter, and the United States ignores it. So they send their troops who still use spears. They look like the Swiss Guard for the Pope, and they buy them passage on a steamer to get to New York, and they get off the boat in their old-fashioned uniforms with their spears, and New York is empty. They're doing a nuclear air raid drill, and so
Mhm.
everyone's hiding under their desks. And they accidentally find a government lab which has a nuclear weapon that can blow up an entire hemisphere. And the guy changes the plan because they were looking for someone to surrender to. And like they try to surrender to a cop and he doesn't buy it. So they take the bomb and the scientist and the daughter who he has a crush on. Now you have to have the love interest back to his
Naturally.
country. And then all the countries of the world start invading their country, but it's like a mile and a half long. They're all sneaking past in suits, trying to get past, and all the people there are dressed not in suits, except
Yeah.
the prime minister. And so you got the Russians, the Israel, China, the United States, Britain, France, like all the World War II powers are there, and they end up negotiating whatever they wanted. It was hilarious. And then at the end, just spoilers, so cover your ears if you were actually going to watch a 40-year-old
It's a
movie.
very old movie, so deal.
Turns out the bomb doesn't even work.
Of
They
course
accidentally
not.
because he accidentally bumps it and sets it off, and it doesn't blow off. They're like, "Oh, we should tell him," and he's like, "No, we tell nobody."
Yep. No, you're now actually making me slightly hate you because, as listeners know, and I was telling you before the show, I'm currently in college again, and my one of my two courses at the moment is modern European history. So last week, our subject was for discussion. It's an online class, so it's all discussion forums. Was the aftermath of World War II, and particularly looking at how we treated Germany, because of course Japan is not part of Europe, although I wound up mentioning it anyway. And if we had had this discussion when we were originally supposed to have it before I had to reschedule you, I would have thought to mention the mouse that roared in my comments. um, because yes, it is actually very interesting, especially because since it's a very quick course, it's 100 years of European history in 8 week in 8 week second modules, 8 weeks. Um, this week or this last, or that was 2 weeks ago. This last week we were talking about, or no, wait, it is this week, so maybe I will work it in at some point. We're talking about the Cold War and specifically how it affected various countries. And myself already in my first discussion and other people's discussions, a lot of what we've been talking about is exactly that. The reason the end of World War II worked, and the reason and the world end of World War One didn't, is because the Allies rebuilt things instead of just Germany, you're paying the bill. Yeah. Although my professor made an interesting point, I need to think about and research more of. In some ways, the end of World War II was harsher on Germany than the end of World War One, because at the end of World War One, yes, they had to pay back pay the entire bill, which kind of somewhat tanked the economy. But at the end of World War II, they weren't allowed to have a military anymore. And remember, while originally it was temporary, they then spent several decades with half of Berlin under communist rule.
whole, the wall.
Yeah, which has been the interesting thing getting to communism or to the Cold War for me. Of you know, I know I'm fascinated by World War II history, and my grandfather served. But I'm at 49. I know enough to remember the night that the Berlin Wall came down. So this is actually like history I was around for a little bit.
I
And
remember
it,
it.
yeah,
Everyone thinks it was Reagan. Mr. Gorbachev, take down
tear
that
down this
wall.
wall. Yeah, take down
And
excuse me.
actually, in Gorbachev's memoir, do you know who he credited with the fall of the Berlin Wall?
Who?
It was not Reagan, the Pope, Pope
That
John
actually
Paul
doesn't
II.
surprise me.
Well, apparently, what was happening is Lee Walesa was, doing his solidarity and protests, and
Mhm.
the Russians decided, well, we're going to crush it. So they sent troops and tanks and headed towards Poland. And I'm dramatizing this in my
Yeah.
own way. History may have varied slightly. Is the Pope call up Gorbachev and it's like, "Hey, Gorby, how you doing? This is JP. I don't know if you know this, but Lee and I, we went to elementary school together. And I don't know if you know this, I'm Polish. So I'm taking Pope Force One to Warsaw, and I'm going to be in the front with Lee. So if you're gonna shoot him, you're gonna have to shoot the Pope first, and I'm bringing cameras with me.
Oh
And
God.
God bless you, you heathen. And and Gorbachev blinked and sent the troops back because he didn't want to kill the Pope.
Fair. Knowing Gorbachev, because that's been the other interesting thing, is my final project for the course, because they gave us a list. It's like, professor's like, here's the list of all the topics you can cover, or you can suggest one. And on Christmas, talking with my aunt, she made a comment that the fall of communism was something she always thought was very interesting. I'm like, I agree with you. And as I've talked about on the show many times, I was in Romania in 2023, and I not only saw but talked to people who lived through Nicolae Ceausescu's the end of his regime. So that's what I chose for my final paper topic with the professor's approval, and it's also what I'm using as my discussion subject. And it's interesting doing the research and the reading on primary and secondary sources to realize Romania is unique in several ways in terms of the history of communism in Europe, partly because, in fact, it was given a degree of autonomy that most other communist countries weren't. And I think there's an argument to be made there that while that worked out great for Nicolae Ceausescu, it's a large source of a bunch of problems for the Romanian people by virtue of, by the time end of the whole story, of course, in 1989, when the revolution happens, Gorbachev has become very mild, and communism is coming to an end throughout most of Europe, where it was still holding on in Romania to the point that Romania is the only country in Western European history, or Western history, I should say, not just European history, where communism was ended by a violent revolution in
Well,
less than a month, no less.
oh wow.
Yes, I mean, things have been brimming for years, obviously, but on December 17th of 1989, Hungarian gentleman or Hungarian priest who, I mean, he was born from a Hungarian family. He lived he was born in Romania though, and there's a large Romanian Hungarian population in Romania, particularly because this is post World War II when they've taken Transylvania. Who was an outspoken critic of Ceausescu, he was arrested, and people flipped. Um, they on the 15th, protesters formed a ring around his home to try to stop the arrest. By the 17th, the Securitat, which is their secret police in the military, started shooting protesters, at which point he was arrested. And it just starts going downhill from there very, very rapidly. Um, and it's fascinating to just read, and we're completely off topic now, I know, so I'll try to wrap this up. Ceausescu trying to hold on to this idea, I'm the people's president, I am the lawful president of my country, literally on Christmas Day, because he was captured on December 22nd, put on basically show trial December 25th, and then executed that night along with his wife, who was the second in command. And his entire he offers no defense during the trial because he refuses to even recognize the court that is putting him on trial as legitimate. And then, ironically, the people that take over are actually also well, they move it to democracy. They're also just less communists who had fallen out of favor.
Gotcha. Wow. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, if we want to turn it back, Transylvania,
The Kingdom
with
of Transylvania in a certain book.
there you go. Well, yeah, no, John French and I wrote a book called Murder at Castle Dracula and the Agents of the Abyss series, in which Transylvania again becomes its own country because in World War One there was a Battle of Transylvania.
Mhm.
In this world, Dracula joins the battle and defeats the other two sides, and he becomes King Dracula or King Vlad. Um, and from then on, it's a country. And when the Martians invade, as they often do, he led for the second invasion. He led the resistance, and he ended up defeating them. And he is the only country. Transylvania is the only country on Earth that has working Martian tech, which makes them a world power right before World War II. So, and in this case, there's a murder that he needs to solve politically, and so he contacts the only man to ever beat him, Sherlock Holmes, and requests his goddaughter and the daughter of Dr. John Watson, Dr. Jane Watson, to come and solve the mystery, and therefore we have Murder at Castle Dracula.
I will
So
also say for my listeners, I've had you on the show several times. I've had John on the show several times. Um, it is one of my favorite books the two of you have ever created for three reasons.
I think I know
Um,
some of
you know for sure one of them. But the first reason is the first thing I was a geek for as a child. Well, the first two things I was ever a geek for as a child are reason one, which is it's about Dracula, and reason two, which is Sherlock Holmes, my other favorite geek thing as a child, shows up in it. And reason three, quite obviously, is of course the dedication, which I'm still very deeply appreciative of.
our pleasure.
It's like you guys are kind enough to send me a book, and it's like you don't have to send me a book. This is what it's like I'm buying it this minute. You told me you told. The only reason I didn't pre-order one the minute you told me it was coming out, you guys told me not to order one. Basically, aside from my personal biases, it is a really fun. I for the record and more promotion for the two of you. I love all of the Agents of the Abyss books so far. So go buy all of them, not just this one. But this is an excellent book.
Yeah, no, it's we managed to work in Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, Jane Watson, Dr. Jane Watson, and in the course we have werewolves, we have Nazis, we have the Martian tech, and we have a cameo by Adam Frankenstein too, and also in our book Frankenstein Monsters of the Abyss, we introduce the Frankencat, who makes a cameo. Because Victor had to test it on something.
The book also is among the second work, the first work of two that I can think of. The other one written by my co-host, in which I wind up making a cameo appearance, or at least reference, or at least my ancestor, the late Kelvin Mears.
Yep. And actually, on a fun note, John has a book coming out called Conventional Sins.
Mhm.
And in which Matthew Grace is the main character. He's a CSI turned private eye turned worked for the Attorney General. Now he is the hotel detective for a big hotel in Baltimore and runs his private investigator business out of his office as kind of part of the deal. And in this world, apparently the Bikini Jones books have launched a series of movies, not unlike James Bond. And manages to work that idea into a murder at a convention. And so I told him, we wouldn't be able to cross over Bikini Jones with any of his stuff because the worlds won't work. So
And
he
he just
accepted
said
the
challenge
challenge.
accepted.
Yep. So a lot of,
We'll have to talk. We'll be having John on in the near future. I forget the name of the book, but we're waiting for his Jack the Ripper book to come out, and then that's what he wants to schedule
I
me.
think it's out. The Red Jack Society. I
Yes.
believe it's out from eSpec. Uh, I believe it's out. I don't want to
Okay.
swear to it. They're at least advertising it everywhere, so I do believe it's out.
In which case, I have a book to order when I get paid.
There you go.
Because I'm also
So
fascinated by, like lots of people, by Jack the Ripper, and I love both of your work, so I'll be buying it. And again, he and I have already discussed about him coming on. He wanted to wait till the book was out, specifically to have something new to promote,
there we go.
other
Well,
than a curiosity of cats, which of course we had him on with everybody else.
yep. Well, the Bikini Jones book will be out shortly. The release date will probably be very soon, because that book's all done and ready to go out. And then hopefully before too long, we will have the Before Twilight book ready and out. Like I said, the first draft is finally done. I won't say how long it actually took, but it's the length of two typical Murphy's novels. So, there's not really a way to break it down into two without doing an Empire Strikes Back ending, and I refuse to do that. You
Yeah,
don't leave a book on a cliffhanger. A monthly serial, sure, but not a book. So
and I am doing a quick Google search because I want to know, because it also occurs to me that since I always prefer to give smaller people money instead of giving it out, damn. According to Goodreads, it's due out on May 26th. I was going to say I'm going to see Danielle in 2 weeks in person because we're going to the same convention. If it was out now, I just probably might just have bought a copy off of her personally.
yeah,
But oh well, something to look forward to. Along with Before Twilight, and as I've said more than once, and will continue to happily say, the various writers I know are trying to bankrupt me, and I love it. Because I keep hearing about your books and going, I need to buy that one and that one and that one and that one.
well, we thank you.
And I
We
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Right back at you. Not to mention the fact that I'm not going to go into detail about it because every time I do, I never wind up actually getting to it. But I currently have a short story idea percolating in my brain. It's what I've had actually for years, but for some reason it's bugging me lately.
There you go. It's time to write it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Write
Well,
it and probably put it online.
sometimes you have those ideas that you just don't have the chance to write. I got a few of them, like I got the story worked out, just don't have the time or the reason. And then an anthology will come up and you're like, yes. Um, I had my first novel was Exile and Entrance, and I had an idea for a story set in that world, which originally in my mind I was going to use the main character Rick. Instead, I used Samuel Trouble, who's a spinoff in a spinoff from the main book, and I managed to. It was for Release the Virgins, which was an anthology that came out a few years back. Really good anthology, a lot of excellent stories and authors, and that was a story that had been in my mind for 15, 20 years. And I finally had the time to do it, and I got to write it. But it sometimes it's got to be the right time and for you to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's just I don't know. Something's bugging me. I'll say what it is. It's basically the idea. It's a story of Lucifer's rebellion, told from the perspective of an aimless angel who's caught in this question of this is wrong. I should do something. Somebody needs to do something. I don't care that he is Lucifer, the firstborn, the most beloved. And then he's with a little bit of encouragement from the sun, he steps forward. As he steps forward, the flaming sword appears in his name, and the story ends either with him throwing Lucy, or at least with the angels of heaven chanting his name, which in Catholic tradition is the battle cry of the loyal angels during the rebellion, who is like God or simply Michael.
Um,
Because as someone
Well,
who has handled,
I
yeah,
will say he makes a cameo before Twilight.
nice.
So, meh.
I have a long fondness for the Archangel Michael, and one thing that always bothers me in many depictions of him is he is very arrogant and prideful. And I like the idea of depicting him as someone who is humble and doesn't think he is worthy to question Lucifer, but because of that humility is worthy. Just from a Judeo-Christian, humility is a virtue logic.
And that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think
Mine,
I
mine
don't
is
think it'd
not
be
humble,
long. No,
but
which
no,
is not.
you should write it.
Yeah. I think I actually made, specifically because I don't think it's long. I think it's probably less than 10 pages when I'm
There
done.
you go.
It feels like it's a short story that I need to tell, so I should sit down and tell it.
Yeah. Especially if it's bugging you, that's sometimes the time to write it.
Yeah.
Because I have 12,000 words on a Terabell novel that just was burning in my head. And a bunch of stuff has to happen before that novel can come out. But that first 12,000 words was just burning in my head and I had to write it.
Right, because we've
So,
mentioned her
and
several
actually, it's the
times.
last 10,000, but I wrote the end of the book first.
I was going to say, since we've mentioned her several times, for anyone listening who's new and doesn't know your work, why don't you explain who Terror Bell is? Because I think it's an excellent. Go buy this book because this is a fun character.
Terabell is a soldier from Fairy who's half ogre, half pixie, and her father was the pixie, so you got to give him a lot of credit. Um, Actually, and we meet him in an alternate future story. His name is Thunder Rod, but that's neither here nor there. Terabell suffers a horrid tragedy as a child, and like Batman, manages to turn the tragedy into doing good. She ends up becoming a soldier in Fairy, then becoming one of the elite Daemor, which is an all-female unit of 150 soldiers working for Queen Mab, who's fighting someone who has conquered most of Fairy, and they are the Resistance. Then she moves to New York, where she works for Nemesis and Company. Nemesis, having had three agents of vengeance in myth, I go with Justice. Um, and Terabell is one of her current agents, along with Ganita, who's the twin sister of Merlin, goes by Ganny, and Thrud, who's the Valkyrie daughter of Thor, goes by Rudy, because Thrud, as is mentioned several times, is a very unfortunate name for a young lady in modern times.
Yeah.
And in Fairy with a Gun, she fights big bads in New York City, including a werewolf who likes to have his victims dress up as Little Red Riding Hood, a zombie called a zombie. Uh,
Zombielicious?
no, I'm trying to think of Video Girl, somebody who would have an OnlyFans account,
Yeah.
but she's a zombie, and her name is Zombielicious, or her stage name.
It's like the name
Um,
alone is just chef's kiss.
Thank you. Um, and Fairy Rides the Lightning, she and Rudy go visit her father Thor, who lives in upstate New York, has a farm, likes to cook because he has a big appetite. A lot of fun happens, and then it turns out Thor is being accused of murder in Valhalla, and they have to prove his innocence. And the stakes get much higher than that. And then
Yep.
in Terabell the Unconquered, we have a prequel, which still makes sense to be the third book because it's better if you read them. You can read them in chronological order, but series order is a little bit better, where we see her early days as a child and a soldier in Fairy, and then we get a couple of bonus stories from a couple of the other Daemor.
Yep. Also a lot. An enormous amount of fun. And having read all of the mentioned books, I would agree that the publication order is probably the better order to read them in. Prequel
Yeah.
or no prequel. It's like, no, you won't be unhappy reading them in chronological, I'd say, but read them the way they're meant to be read.
Like, same thing with the Murphy's Law series. Technically, Redemption Road happens before the last couple of chapters of Fool's Day, but Fool's Day is the second book. You learn some stuff in book 3 that is crucial to book 4 that if we put into book 2, wouldn't have worked out so well. So sometimes, it's better to read them in written order rather than that. But all the Murphy's books are written in such a way that you can start with any one of them and not be lost and, be caught up
And
by
have
the
a good
first or
time.
second chapter. Thank you. That's, it's Murphy's is humorous, but it's a series that takes the horrors of this world and tries to make them better. Emphasis on the tries, because even though they're gods and leprechauns and all sorts of people from folklore and myth, it doesn't mean they can fix everything. But it's comforting to know that in this world, at least, there are people who are trying and, will help just because it's the right thing to do.
Tales from Bullfinch's Pub, the first book, and Exile and Entrance were my introductions to you. A very long time ago at a convention, I met when CJ was still with us. I met you. I bought the 2 of them, but I was still doing radio of all things. And I actually had bought them with an eye to having you on the radio show.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that was not much long. Lou had fallen ill at that point, so the idea was I'll wait for Lou to get better because the show was kind of on hiatus because of the illness, and he didn't. Which is also, I've said several times over the years, when I first started doing this show, literally 10 years ago, which makes me feel so old, because 10 years in radio and 10 years doing this, and it's like, and another 10, and it's like, and there's still another 10 years before you get to when I was in high school. God. There were the 2 people I most wanted to get on the show were yourself and who we finally had a month or so ago, Jim Butcher, which has also led me to the moment of, I've hit the 2 main goals I had for doing this show. I'm not done, but it's like, I've got to think about where I want to go from here.
That's a nice problem to have.
Yes, it is. And I will also say, I think that what we're doing here, and I should say, because it's also 9:37 at night. And I
we
need
probably should wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, luckily, I'm the boss, so I set the schedule, but we should wrap up mostly because I need to have dinner and I have medication I have to take. But I want, before we go, to quickly plug that next week we are having David Lee Summers. We were supposed to have last week, but unfortunately I was ill.
David is great.
We've had him on twice now as a group with A Curiosity of Cats and the one before, the same series one before, the name of which I'm blanking on, Assembly of Monsters.
Gotcha.
But now we're going to just have him.
Just to tie it back, David Lee Summers published in Tales of the Talisman, where he was editor-in-chief, published the Dear Cthulhu columns for years. So
fantastic.
And he has a project now called the Museum of the Omniverse, which he's one of the executive producers on, which is a full cast audio, original music, audio drama, and it's wonderful. It's got David, it's got Timothy Zahn, it's got some guy named Patrick Thomas. So if you like audio books, Museum of the Omniverse Dragon Edition exhibit, rather, it's worthwhile checking out.
What particularly fascinates me about that at the moment is I'm not positive, but I could swear the other day I was having a conversation with somebody about urban fantasy who name dropped that audio book to me, and I did, without me realizing, David Lee Summers or yourself or any of these other fine people, some of whom I'm lucky enough to know, were involved in it. But other than David, the week after him, we're going to have Keith DeCandido. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Which is another guy we've had on before, but only ever in a group. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to speak to them both individually.
I think, and Keith is great too. He has a new paranormal police procedural out from the Weird Tales imprint of Blackstone Publishing, I believe. So
Yes, he had mentioned that, and we'll of course be talking about it on the show. But I am sorry to say, because I am having as much fun as I always do talking with you, Patrick. But as I have said, it is now almost 9:40 at night, and folks, I'm going to have to wrap this up. If you're listening still, thank you very much. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, or dislike if you don't like what we did, and tell me what I'm doing wrong. Either way, it helps the algorithm, so I'm happy. I'm good with it. Make sure to pick up Pat's books. I'll have a link to your Amazon page in the description, so that people know where to find you. And that'll do it for tonight, folks. If you remember, if you have a little bit of money, feel free to add it to the Patreon. If not, that's cool too. We appreciate you watching. That's going to do it for me. This is Kevin Mears saying good night. Brian.
Barry McKinley saying keep your fangs sharp